The Picos de Europa, or Peaks of Europe, is a mountain range that stretches approximately 20 kilometers or 12 miles and forms part of the Cantabrian Mountains in northern Spain. This range spans the autonomous communities of Asturias, Cantabria, Castile, and León. My 6-day hike will take me across unnerving terrain, breathtaking vistas, and interesting wildlife. My journey starts off in Sotras, the highest town in Asturias. From there I head west, but not before picking up an essential chorizo sausage to keep me fueled on the day's march. My goal is to reach the Urielu mountain refuge where I plan to spend the night. After an initial decline out of town, the day is a constant climb from around 1,000 meters to 2,200 meters elevation. My legs, as always, feel fresh and energized at the start of the trip, and I make sure to enjoy this feeling. After passing the first refuge, which I won't be stopping at, the views really start ramping up. At this point, I'm enjoying the fresh air and a slight nervousness at what's to come. I'm surprised at how few people there are, as by this point I've only passed a few. But even if there weren't many people, I didn't feel that lonely as there were some other inhabitants on the path. Hola. I'm also feeling pretty lucky. I'm doing this out of season, and the weather so far is clear and sunny. But not for long. Visibility starts to get really bad as a thick fog rolls in, and the terrain changes to something more like a boulder field. I can barely see 5 or 10 meters in front of me, but it's enough to see the path, and the occasional hiker I see makes me feel more confident that I'm still on the right path. I'm also thankful that I only have about 10k to cover today, as the incline is starting to make itself felt.
I'm struggling.
Eventually, through the fog, I glimpse the spooky outline of the refuge. The refuge is surprisingly big, and I start to recharge my social battery by chatting to other travelers. Eventually the fog cleared, and revealed where we were in much more detail. After being fed a nice warm meal, but sadly no shower, I settled in for a sleep of only a few hours, thanks to Spain's largest snorer being 2 beds away from me. Day 2 took me northwest towards the João de los Cabrones mountain hut. This is when the path started to become much less clear and you had to keep an eye out for small piles of rocks with some spray paint to indicate you were going in the right direction. The terrain became very rocky and steep, but the sun rising revealed yet more amazing views that made it all worth it. I even saw my first chamois, which was an awesome surprise.
So this is what I've just come up. I don't know if you can see that man all the way down there.
Pretty soon the incline started ramping up even more, and the path changed to be a finer gravel that tended to slip under your feet.
You see these rungs? I have to climb these rungs to get through this section.
But once I reached the top of this section, I really felt like I was on top of the world. The sky looked so blue and the morning light on the cliffs looked stunning. Time for a break and to have a bite of the packed lunch the refuge had provided. It was here that I got my first glimpses of snow on the trail. Soon I dropped down into a landscape of grey. I reached the next refuge much earlier than expected, in early afternoon. However, I had no regrets and spent the rest of the day taking pictures, reading and relaxing my legs. This refuge was smaller and was run by a nice couple and their 2 very friendly dogs. Shout out to Arthur, who persuaded me to hike up to see the sunset on the nearby ridge, for yet more epic views. The morning gifts me with a beautiful show of colours. The night before, I had managed to wash myself in a nearby outdoor tap, so I feel nice and refreshed as I begin the next leg of my journey. I'm headed towards Bolnez, which I have been told will be downhill pretty much the whole way. At first, I'm looking forward to this, but then it starts to take its toll on my legs much more than the incline had. I end up having to take a break every half kilometer or so, just to give my legs a break. Just when I think I'm finally near the bottom, a new valley opens up with an even steeper descent than the last. I even run across a dead cow, which is something I've somehow never seen before. At least it's a comforting reminder that if I do die out here, I'll be giving the vultures a hearty meal.
This has got to be the most brutal day so far. Just downhill all day. My legs are shaking. Looking back up, it seems like I've come so far, but then looking down, still seems like there's so far to go.
Eventually, I do reach the bottom, which feels amazing, and I appreciate the sheer cliff faces on either side, which make me feel very small. Bolnez is not much further, and provides me with my first shower, which feels like heaven. The next morning, I started out onto the Ruta del Carrez, or the Carrez Trail, the most spectacular and well-known hiking route in Asturias. The route follows the Carrez River, between the Western Massif and the Central Massif. My legs were feeling pretty beat up from the day before, but there were some positives.
Yesterday the descent just killed my legs, so even uphill feels so good right now.
The water looked blue and crystal clear, and although I didn't have time for a dip, I couldn't resist at least washing my face in it. The path features sheer drops on one side, so if you're afraid of heights or you get vertigo, it probably isn't the route for you. It is truly epic though, and even features these cool tunnels through the rock itself. I'm definitely glad I did this part out of season, as it's apparently one of the busiest hiking routes in Spain, but today it felt nice and quiet. I'm definitely going to need a new pair of walking boots by the end of this trip. Eventually I reached Caen, which is where I planned to spend the night, but not before paying the scratches toll to the two feline guardians of the town. As I was out of season, Caen seemed like an eerie ghost town, with hundreds of empty chairs. I had left early in the morning to try and get here before 2 PM, as that's when it was scheduled to rain, and right on cue. And the next day, the rain just didn't stop.
It's been raining all day and it's going to continue to rain all day. And stupidly, I brought a very thick, warm waterproof instead of a very thin one. So it was been way too hot to wear it. So instead I've just been wearing my t-shirt and just getting drenched, soaked through. This is the first shelter I found, so I decided to take my t-shirt off, dry myself off, and I'm now just wearing my thick waterproof with nothing on underneath. Lesson learned, don't bring a warm waterproof to a hot country.
And because I stupidly have no waterproof case for my camera or an umbrella, I can't record anything as I make my way to Refugio de Vigabano. Just rest assured I have a truly miserable time. After a good sleep at Vigabano, I set off for my final leg with still slightly wet clothes. I'm headed only around 10 kilometers towards Oseja de Sejambre. There I will get a taxi to Cangas de Onís and bus it from there to Asturias Airport. I really enjoy how the air is misty and crisp. I also realise that I am not alone out here. I've never seen so many wild mushrooms before in my life, and so many different kinds. Now the mushroom poster in the refuge makes more sense. I pass through the small village of Soto de Sejambre, which gives me my final epic views. Finally, I arrive at Oseja de Sejambre, the end of my journey. As I wait for my taxi, I reflect on the epic adventure. The highs and the lows.
I'm struggling.
The epic wildlife and the stunning views. The renewed awareness that these kinds of adventures are good for you. Good for your soul. Pushing yourself one more step out of your comfort zone. I had learned many lessons from this trip that I would bring to the next one. And there would be a next one.